Guys, I'm Lauren Terry from brightsonwhite.com, and I'm going to show you how to make a simple rag quilt. This is a great quilt to start with if you're new to quilting or sewing. It comes together quickly and it's pretty simple. So let's get started. Alright, I'm going to be making a baby-sized rag quilt. So it'll be about 3 feet by 3 feet when we're done. And if that's it, you can use this technique for any size, but if you want to make a baby size, then you'll need 1 1/4 yards of 2 different kinds of fabric. And this is like the soft fleece fabric. So, alright, I'm going to start out by cutting. And I've laid my fabric, so I'm going to cut both of it at the same time. So I have 4 layers of fabric here. This is folded over, and I've made sure that it's flush at the top. Then this is folded over, and I've made sure it's flush at the top. So first I'm going to go ahead and trim off so I can cut from a clean edge. Alright, and now we're going to cut it into 5" by 5" squares. This ruler happens to be 5 inches, so that's perfect. So I'm going to make sure that it's lined up here at the bottom and that it's lined up along the side. I'll scoot that over. And I'm probably going to cut 2 more 5" strips before I start cutting it like crosswise, so I'll show you what I mean. There's another one. I just moved this over so I can see exactly where this edge is. Then line it up with the bottom. And cut again. Alright. Now I'm going to twist my mat this way, and I'm going to cut 5 inches down. Actually, I'll go from the fold. So I'm going to cut 5 inches down. So what I do now is just kind of scoot these together. And if you want to just cut 1 strip at a time, so you just cut this top strip at a time, that's fine. I just find that this works well for me, and then it just goes faster. So I'm going to come to the edge here, and I don't want to cut off too much, just barely cutting off the fold on all of these. Alright. And then we're just going to do the same thing, measure 5 inches. So you can see now I have 2 yellow 5" squares. And I'm going to put them so it's right sides up and do a stack. And then I have these, this is my patterned fleece squares. I'll put those in a stack, right sides up. Alright, and I'm going to continue cutting until I have 64 of each kind of fabric. Alright, you can see I've got my 64 squares of the yellow and 64 squares of my patterned fleece. And this fleece happens to be a little more fluffy, so that pile's taller, but there's 64 in each. Now we need to get 64 5" squares of batting. So you can also buy batting on the bolt. Sometimes in the fabric store it comes in like a really big roll that's like this tall. You don't need to get that kind. You can just get the kind that's similar to normal fabric. It's just on a bolt, but it's the batting there. Or I'm going to try using, I have these scraps of batting, and they're too small for a quilt, but we're cutting this batting up into 5" squares. So whichever way you do it, cut it so you have 64 squares that are 5" by 5" of this fluffy batting. Alright, next step. So for this step, I recommend that you get a fabric marker, and really, especially for this project, it's worth it. I get mine from Walmart. On this side it says air and water soluble, and then on this side it's just water soluble. I would use the just water soluble side, because if you use the air side, sometimes I've drawn my lines that I needed, and then I came back a couple days later and the air had just, I don't know, it was air soluble, so the lines were gone. So I'm going to be using this water side, and whichever one of your fabrics is less fluffy, you're going to draw X's on each of those ones, and you're going to do it on the right side. So this is the wrong side of the fabric, this is the right side of the fabric, and we're going to draw an X just across the top of this. And if you have just a normal ruler, that'd be kind of nicer than this, but this is all I've got, so I'm just going to use it. So get my water fabric, or my water marker here, sorry, my fabric marker, And you're just going to draw a straight line like that. See? Now, switch it the other way. And you're going to draw another line just from corner to corner so that you have an X. Alright, and you're going to repeat that with all 64 of these blocks. You're just going to draw an X on each one. Okay. Now, after you've done that, we're going to start making little teeny quilt sandwiches. A quilt sandwich is a top piece, the batting, and the back piece. So in this case, I'm going to take, this is going to be my top piece. I'm going to take one of these pieces of batting, that's my middle piece, and then I'm going to place my backing piece. And you want this with the right side out. Alright, so this is the right side of the fabric that I'm seeing, and this is the right side of the fabric that I'm seeing. That's the wrong side, and it's going to be on the inside. So line these up so that it's flush, and then if you want to, you can take a few straight pins, especially if you're new. You don't want these to shift around while you're sewing, and you can just put a couple straight pins in here. And maybe later, as you get more experience with this, you'll decide you don't need them. Now we're just going to sew on the line on both of these sides. So I'm going to take it in here and just sew down this line. And you want to back stitch at the beginning and end. Back stitching just makes it so that your seam that you're doing won't come undone. It holds it, it's like a beginning and an end. It makes it closed off for you. So you can see I did one way. Now I'm going to just do the other way on the X. And my bobbin thread is going to mess up. Alright, let's try this again. Okay. And you'll want to smooth it out when you're crossing this middle line. You'll want to kind of pull it to smooth it out so that you don't get a poofy pouch right there. Alright, so here's my little X, little quilt sandwich that I've made. I'm going to do that same thing with all 64 of these blocks. Okay, I just wanted to show you a couple tips as you are doing this and show you some chain piecing. So first off, when I'm going to sew my 64 little quilt sandwiches together, I like to assemble them a few at a time and then sew them a few at a time. So I've taken my yellow ones and I put them with the right side facing down. Then I'm going to grab two of my batting pieces, place those right on top. Then 2 or 3 or 4, however many you're doing at a time, of the top pieces and place them face down. Alright, so now I have 4 little sandwiches that are ready to go. And I'm going to chain piece these. Chain piecing means you don't take it off. You don't take the piece off each time. You do a bunch and then you take them all off and then you do a bunch more. And I'll show you what I mean. So let's start. I'm just sewing down the line that I drew. Okay, so I sewed my first one. Now I could lift at my presser foot, take this off, cut the threads, and then do the other side, but instead I'm going to chain piece it, which means I'm just going to put in the next one and keep going. Okay, and I'll do one more here. So if I was doing this, I would probably assemble 4 at a time and then just chain all of them. So it's called chain piecing because it kind of makes a little chain like that when you're done. So then I just snip off any extra threads and separate them. And then I'm going to chain piece it, only I'm doing the other line. So after you've chain pieced all of those, then I'll show you the next step. I'm going to show you how to finish this up. So a couple things as I've been sewing more of these, I've learned that it's actually really nice to pin when you're making these little quilt sandwiches, because most normal presser foots, they actually feed the top fabric through a little faster than the bottom fabric, and so that kind of makes one of them, it kind of makes them go, you know, off, they're not flush. So pinning them really helps. And then also you actually don't have to backstitch at the beginning and end. So when you're chain piecing, you can just go straight through. All right, so when you're ready to make a 4 patch, grab 4 of these and lay them out just like this. Then take this top left one and flip it over, and then the bottom right one and flip it over. Okay, so that's what our 4 patch is going to look like. Now you're going to put this right sides together and right sides together, and we're going to sew right along here and right along here. And I've done that with these ones right here. So you can see, here's my top left patch, my bottom right patch, and I've sewn these together. Now what I'm going to do is pick it up. So here's my seam allowance that's showing. I'm going to pick it up just like this, and I'm going to sew right along this edge. When you get to these seam allowances, just kind of use your fingers. You can press it on an iron. Just take an iron and press that open, and then find the middle of this side and press that open. Or you can just, this is called finger pressing, when you just kind of open them up. And I think that'll be sufficient. But you're always welcome to use an iron. All right, let's sew this together. I'm using just a little bigger than a 1/4 inch seam here. And this middle spot has a lot of thickness, so just go slowly. All right. So now this is our 4 patch, okay? You're going to continue making these 4 patches until you have 16. You'll have 16 total. So I've made some right here, and you can see I have 3 different 4 patches. When I am sewing these together now, we're going to make a row of 4. So I have 1, 2, I'll sew those together, and then I'll sew 3 right here, and also a 4th right here. So it'll be a row of 4. Again, you have these seam allowances facing up, and you're just going to pick these up, and then you're going to sew along right there. You can see that when you turn this over, there aren't any seam allowances showing on this side. So that's the back, but then all the seam allowances are here on the front. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these 2 4 patches together. I'm going to make sure my seam allowances here in the middle are open. And the nice thing about rag quilts is that they're intended to be a little bit messy. So don't worry if things look a little, I don't know, crooked or off, that's just fine. Alright, so this is a row of 2. Again, I'm going to make a row of 4, and I'm going to do that 4 times. So after you have your row of 4, you'll have 4 rows of 4, then you'll sew your rows together into one big quilt block. And once you get to that point, the last step is to snip each of these seam allowances. Just a minute, whoever's there, I'll be right out. So what you'll do is you'll come and you'll cut, but you want to make sure not to cut through this seam that you sewed. So just cut down a little bit, but not through the seam. And you'll do that along all of these edges. Alright, so I'm going to show you one last time. So we're just trimming all of these things. That's what kind of makes it look like a rag quilt. And again, you don't want to go through that seam. I like to do mine just like a 1/4 inch apart, and I just try really not to go too far, because then you're gonna have to bring it back to the sewing machine and start all over again. So after you've trimmed your quilt along each of these seam allowances that are showing, then you're just gonna wash it in the washing machine and dry it. And when it does that, these will kind of fray just a little bit, and then they'll curl up and it looks really cute. And you finished your very first quilt. Way to go!